This episode is brought to you by MeUndies. While MeUndies can't totally help your love life this Valentine's Day, they can offer you insanely comfy undies and loungewear to buy or gift. MeUndies has so many awesome Valentine's Day prints and styles. Plus, you can match with your partner, friends, or even your pets. This Valentine's Day, give the gift that'll keep them thinking of you and score huge site-wide savings at MeUndies.com/Spotify. That's MeUndies.com/Spotify. MeUndies. Comfort from the outside in.
It's the Larry Kudlow Show. Free market prosperity starts here. Now, here's Larry Kudlow.
So, as we talked about in the last hour, Mr. Trump went ahead with tough tariff diplomacy, slapping 25% tariffs on Mexico and Canada, and another 10% on China, and there are probably more tariffs to come. And, of course, the newspapers are just full of we're going to have inflation, the economy is going to crash. They don't talk about why he's putting the tariffs on or his whole program or the fact that polls show the tariffs are very popular. So let's bring in John Carney, Breitbart news editor for economics and finance and co-author of the great Breitbart Business Digest. So, John, your article here is William McKinley is back. President William McKinley is back. I love that. McKinley was president 1896, and he won a second term in 1900, and then he was assassinated in 1901. Who was William McKinley, by the way? Maybe you should tell people who he is. Oh, did we lose John?
Hey.
Oh, there you are. Who is William McKinley? I just missed him. You know,
you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Are you on? All right, we're going to call him back. Anyway, I'm going to fill in the blanks while we get John Carney back. McKinley was the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee in the latter part of the 19th century. And in 1890, he passed the McKinley Tariff, which was a protectionist measure to boost American manufacturing. And in fact, between the end of the Civil War and then call it 1910, 1915, when the income tax was passed, I believe it was 1913, the income tax was finally passed. We relied on tariffs to supply federal government revenues. There was no tax. And McKinley was a very strong president when he became president in 1896, and his vice president was Theodore Roosevelt. Anyway, now we have my pal John Carney back. So, John, the party of McKinley is back. I love that.
Yes. Look, one of the things that the recent polling that I've been looking at shows is how strongly Republicans now favor tariffs. Mm-hmm. This is a return to the roots of, as you were just explaining, the roots of the Republican Party. We were the party that believed in tariffs. McKinley, in particular, believed that tariffs were a great way to raise revenue. One of the problems, actually, they had at the time of McKinley was that they were raising can you imagine this, Larry, in this age of giant deficits? Their problem 120 years ago was that they were raising so much revenue through their tariffs that they weren't sure what to do with it. they had a huge surplus, and they formed things like blue ribbon commissions. And actually, our national parks partly come out of that interesting problem, which was what to do with our money. And then one of the ideas was, well, we have these great national wildernesses. Let's use some of that money to preserve that. This is obviously, not the problem we have now. We're running giant deficits. We have inflation out of control. We need to cut back on government spending. But it is a reminder in this age where when you just even talk about raising tariffs, people say that will destroy the economy, that actually the original American way of collecting revenue for the U.S. government was through tariffs, that we could probably do a lot of good by shifting at least some of the revenue away from internal taxes on corporations, on individuals, and towards what Trump has called the External Revenue Service, towards tariffs. I think that would help a lot. It would actually lead to a lot less intrusive government, because when the government is collecting its revenues at the borders, they need a lot less intervention into our daily lives. They don't need to know as much as what we're doing from day to day in our business transactions, because more of the revenue is coming from stuff coming into the ports.
John Carney, what do you make of the tariffs on Canada and Mexico? How long do you think they'll be in place?
I don't think they're going to be in place very long, because it is going to be absolutely devastating, particularly in Canada. Look, Mexico's economy is already in a lot of trouble. They contracted. There is a risk that they slip into a recession. So I think Mexico is going to back off very quickly. But when I've been listening to what the local Canadian officials have been saying, so forget about Pierre Trudeau and, the Justin Trudeau, rather, forget about what he's saying. Pay attention to what the provincial governors, what the mayors are saying. They know that this tariff is going to be devastating for them. They are going to try everything they can to get it taken off, including, I wouldn't be surprised to start to hear some of the provincial governors saying, well, look, if our federal government won't do what Trump needs to do, we'll step up and do it and try to get those tariffs removed. Remember, what Trump is asking for is not any giant lift. He wants help with fentanyl, help with Chinese goods, help with illegal migrants. I think those are all doable, and I think they'll be able to get the tariffs up. Although, having pushed Trump this far, Larry, you're very familiar with this, Trump doesn't like it when people, try to test him, when they assume that he's bluffing. So in some ways, by having pushed it to February 1st, I think the tariffs just got 10 feet higher. I think it becomes harder now to get them removed.
As usual, John Carney, the newspapers are full of stories about how the tariffs are going to really hurt America, and in particular cause all this inflation. Big story in the Wall Street Journal today about this. Two things here. Number one, we'll go through this. His whole program is counterinflationary.
That's right.
But number two, they never said anything. When Joe Biden was spending $5-6 trillion and the Federal Reserve was increasing the money supply by 30%, and we wound up with a 9% inflation rate, and which was 20% plus over 4 years, ruining blue-collar workers' paychecks. They never said anything about those inflation. That's only Trump inflation. You got to love this. All of a sudden, Trump's the inflationist? Really? What happens to there's amnesia going on about the past 4 years?
Actually, it's the past 8 years, because remember, they said the tariffs would be inflationary in the first term, then, and they weren't. Then they said Biden's spending would not be inflationary, and it was. And now they're saying the Trump tariffs are. In other words, they get it exactly backwards every time. One of the smartest guys at the Fed, Chris Waller, has said he doesn't think they're inflationary. He thinks that that there could be, for some things, a one-time price increase, but that will mostly be offset by prices falling elsewhere. Because remember, what we know about inflation is you need there to be an accommodation. The federal government has to run a bigger deficit, and the Fed has to be supplying more money. If all you're doing is raising a tax, that doesn't usually become inflationary at all. It shifts prices around. Waller said he expects a perhaps one-time movement up in prices, but no ongoing inflationary pressures. I think we might not see anything at all. Particularly, I think we're going to see a huge currency adjustment. The dollar's going to strengthen. That will actually mean that the cost of these tariffs are being borne almost entirely by Canada and Mexico, because the dollar has strengthened so much that we can actually keep buying stuff from them.
And last one, the latest numbers, even year on year, 12-month change, 4-quarter change, the Fed's target, the core PCE deflator, personal consumption deflator, is 2.8. Their target is 2.0. And Trump ripped into the Fed last Wednesday with Truth Social. He's more worried about inflation than the Fed is.
What's funny, Larry, is I'm glad you brought this up, because when Trump did criticize the Fed, a lot of people missed what he was criticizing them for. They said, oh, there goes Trump criticizing the Fed for not cutting rates, but that's not what he did. He was criticizing them for having let inflation get out of control, which is why rates got as high as they did, because they had to pull back inflation. And so he was not at all, as you said, not criticizing them for being too tight. He would say you had been too loose in the past. As you and I both know, Trump knows that inflation is the biggest problem for most Americans. It's one of the reasons he got elected. He is not going to do anything to make inflation worse. And his program is anti-inflationary because it is a supply-side program that will grow the supply side of the economy, that should help alleviate the inflationary pressures that aren't going away right away, because we are going to be stuck with the legacy of Biden inflation for a while. So we're going to having to be overcoming that by ramping up supply.
Got it. John Carney, co-author of the great Breitbart Business Digest. It's a daily must-read, folks. Thank you, John. Quick break, folks, and then we're going to go to the great Steve Forbes, chairman of Forbes Media, and talk some more about tariffs and inflation and how long it's going to last. And I'm Kudlow, and we'll be right back.
This is the Larry Kudlow Show.
It's Ocean Drive in Coney Island.
Ocean Drive is the only luxury rentals in New York with a spectacular ocean view. You wake up in the morning and breathe that ocean air. I'll certify that you're going to live 10 years longer. When I became successful, I wanted to live on the ocean. If you have worked hard, you deserve an apartment on Ocean Drive too. Go to oceandrivenyc.com and reward yourself.
If you're a policeman, fireman, doctor, nurse, or teacher, you qualify for a limited time offer at oceandrivenyc.com. Terms and conditions apply.
I've been matchmaking all my life. I introduced my best friend and his wife. I introduced my program director, Kevin Drosch, to Inhala. And now I'm going to match you with Inhala. Yes, you two should sleep together. Skip the sleep center. Avoid the CPAP machine. Get in bed with Inhala. It's a custom-fit oral appliance. There's no bulky hoses or uncomfortable mask. Inhala works with your private medical insurance and makes the process seamless. I talked to the people at Inhala.com, and they're going to help you just like they helped out Kevin and his fiancée. She'll finally be able to sleep through the night while Kevin is using Inhala. Follow Kevin's sleep journey right here on 77 WABC. Now is the time for a treatment that is right for you. Visit Inhala.com or call 844-INHALA-1. That's 844-INHALA-1. So like my program director, Kevin, skip the sleep center, avoid the CPAP machine, get in bed with Inhala. Inhala.com, INHALA.com.